My name is Christian Rodriguez, and on December 2nd, 2016, I packed my bags and I left on a trip. I left in a car to drive from the Bronx, New York City, to New Hampshire. From the time we left to the time we arrived in New Hampshire, the whole car ride took about 5.5 hours. I wasn't exactly nervous, but after driving in and seeing all these mountains, I started to realize what I was actually getting myself into. The next morning I woke up pretty early, but being excited for the climb had me full of energy, and I just wanted to leave already. Alright, so after waking up at 5 a.m., a quick breakfast, and getting geared up with my guide, we took a 20-minute drive to Mount Washington to begin our climb. After arriving at the trailhead, we ended up in the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center. Basically, everybody comes here to make sure they have all their gear one last time before they start the climb. We had no idea of what to expect. So at 7 a.m., we start our climb. The temperature was only about 30 degrees when we started climbing, but since we're moving a lot, we really only wore 2 layers, a light base layer and a fleece sweater. And actually, what we were wearing when we started is kind of what makes this mountain so dangerous. So many people climb this mountain or begin to climb it in light layers, not expecting for the weather to get as bad as it does once you reach the top of tree line and above. After a few thousand steps, we ended up at this. This was supposed to be the beginning of the new trail, but because of construction, they actually had the trail closed off. So we had to go up another route. What our guide didn't tell us was that the new route that we had to take was actually steeper and harder to climb than the previous one, which was normally climbed by everybody. Okay, so at this point it was about 1.5 to 2 hours that we've been climbing, and at this little stream, what makes it so hard to cross is the fact that the rocks are covered in ice. The water may only be about 1 foot deep, but it's ice cold, and if you fall in, that would mean the end of your climb. So we took our time getting across. Okay, so after what felt like an hour of crossing the stream, we finally started climbing again. And the next parts of our climb were significantly steeper, they were definitely rockier and harder than the previous. Sections like these that were going uphill, but they weren't as steep or weren't as full as rocks as the previous climbing, were definitely appreciated by our knees. And like I said before, because of the detour that we had to take, the new trail that we were climbing was very rocky, and it definitely made it harder for the fact that the rocks were covered in ice, and if you stepped on them wrong, you slipped pretty hard. And on top of the rocks, if you slipped, then you ended up in these little streams, which just will make things worse. These parts of the climb were some of my favorite, not only because it wasn't as steep as previous, but all the trees around and the perfect trail, it kind of felt like I was in a postcard. And like I said, more streams, followed by another stream. And yes, another stream. And so we kept on climbing. Luckily, the other guy I was climbing with asked the guide for a break, and we took this nice little 5-minute break at about 4,000 feet, and then continued climbing. Yes, I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same. Yes, those are stairs on a mountain. These parts of the climb were kind of my favorite, just because there was a nice little drop on one side, so it kind of made it more fun, knowing to stay more concentrated and focused on where you were walking. It actually surprised me at how much of climbing is more mental than physical. Of course, you have to have the physical strength, but looking up and seeing how much you still had left to climb definitely plays with your head and makes you think, should you really keep climbing? And for me, the answer was, of course. I was excited to be climbing Mount Washington, especially climbing it in December and doing the whole winter climb. But the fact that it was really foggy, so I couldn't see any of the mountains around or the view, was definitely disappointing. At this point, the guide was about 30 feet ahead of me, and my second climbing partner was about 20 feet behind me. We kept little distances in case we slipped. Around this point, I had my camera recording for about an hour, so I thought I would shut it off until we got further up. The next time I hit record, this is what we saw. It was 60 mile/hour winds and -5 degrees, not including wind chill. We could have gone higher. We were only about 400 feet away from the summit. But if we did, our guide said it was going to be really dangerous and he didn't want to risk it. We took a quick picture and headed back down quick. I put the camera away because it began to freeze, and when I started recording again, we were already about 500 feet from where we last took the picture. And the change in weather was pretty crazy. It went from 60 mile/hour winds to probably only about 30 miles per hour. It was pretty slippery going down, and we fell a lot of times. Sliding down on the snow was probably some of my favorite parts of the whole climb. So, all in all, was it worth it? Of course. Even though we didn't make it to the top, it was a great experience, and I definitely learned a lot. It was definitely still an adventure, and that's what I wanted. And then I remembered one of my favorite quotes: life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all.